So welcome to the UpLevel Podcast, Erin and Mike.
Thank you.
Hey, Christy.
Hey. This conversation has been, I've been wanting it to happen for a long time. And I know like the history of how we know each other will come out, but let's dive in with this question. I'm going to ask each of you for your definition of coaching. Erin, how do you define coaching?
I love that we're diving in. And so coaching, I'm going to use the definition that I use pretty much on a daily basis, but I really see coaching as a partnership between two people. There's not a hierarchical relationship. It's really a partnership with two people where the coach is really helping the coachee or whoever they're coaching to really find their own answers and come up with their own solutions. So they ultimately own it. So coach's job is to listen. Coach's job is to ask questions. Coach's job is to partner with the coachee or client to ultimately help and support them in a way that supports the coachee's agenda. You have how that sounded, but you have a definition?
Yeah, for me, it's have the light bulb go off.
Have the light bulb. I love that. Have the light bulb go off in the other person. Nice bottom line, Mike.
Well, yeah. I think it's really that simple. Whether it's team coaching, whether it's coach client, whether it's being coach like in an organization, it's really just creating that safety for that other person to show up,
to have that light bulb moment.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons, and I've told you this, why I wanted you to come in this season is because you have a very unique dynamic. You are life partners, you are parents, obviously together, and you are running this incredible organization. So I think a lot of what I'd love for you to bring today is hearing the stories about how coaching skills and co-leadership skills come into every aspect of this incredible dynamic. So before we get there, what came first for each of you? Was it coaching, or did you find each other and then you found coaching? What's the historical origin story of this partnership and coaching?
I found Mike in a hotel lobby or hotel bar.
Always a good place to find a British boy.
Yeah. I find my hand.
And, at the time when we met each other, we were both consultants. So we were both working I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Where were you at the time?
KPMG.
Yeah. So we were both former consultants and grinding it out in our careers. And I think how we came about coaching, I remember talking to Mike when we were living in London saying, I don't feel like I'm having much of an impact in what I'm doing day to day working with people. And he said, have you heard of coaching? And I said, no, I haven't heard of coaching. And so actually my career went off on a little bit of a tangent. I don't know if you know this about me, Christy, but I trained as a hypnotherapist first.
I didn't know that.
I'm not just a hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
Because I was really curious about how the subconscious and conscious and our consciousness worked together. And from that journey of learning more about the subconscious and how that informs our conscious mind, I then, when we moved back to the States, trained as a coach.
Yeah.
Do you want to share your...
I think I'd always been seeking self-help. And so I was always looking for books that would help me, even as a child.
Yeah.
So I always was curious about that. And then meeting Erin, I think we both had a similar interest, but we were sort of trying to figure, as Erin's saying, I did NLP training. Erin did hypnosis training. And we sort of converged around. Erin did her coach training first, and then I followed. And
he was my client.
Yeah.
No, he was.
Well, I'm sure he was. I mean, look where it got you. You did some good coaching. It worked.
He was actually a client for somebody in my program. And I think I remember that time you were just not satisfied with the work that you were doing. And I remember it was such a pivot point for you because you really wanted to go into the field of coaching and leadership. And you had already dabbled, I remember, in that.
Yeah.
With, your consulting days. But I remember him wanting that so much. And that was the pivot point I remember for you, was when you got coached by somebody.
Yeah. Her name was Gina Pagan, and she was amazing. She was going through her training, and she asked me 2 or 3 powerful questions, like what brings you most alive? And I just remember sitting on my back looking at the ceiling, and it was a 2.5-hour coaching session that was supposed to be 30 minutes. And at the end of it, it was like, okay, I don't want to be doing, because I was still doing a lot of CPA type work. And it was like, yeah, this is not my life.
And here we are, fast forward 15 years later. Is that about right?
Yeah.
I think there's always that fear of, like, at the time where it's like, people come to coaching because they want something greater for themselves, or more a deeper sense of fulfillment or satisfaction. And I think when he made that leap, it was kind of quite scary for both of us, because we were both transitioning careers. And at the same time, it's like, how are we going to make it? Because it was a big jump from earning a salary as a consultant and then going into more of an unknown territory. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how the coaching and the different training that you continue to do has impacted your life partnership and the business that you're co-leading.
Okay, let's talk about it.
I'll do the business bit, and Erin can do the life partnership bit.
It's an art, I think. And sometimes art is messy, and sometimes art looks beautiful, and there's all different forms of how the art looks. And I think for the most part, it really works for Mike and I to be in these roles. I also think, part of our mission, our own personal missions, is ACT, helping people become more aware, to be at choice, to ultimately get to a transformation. And I think we both really hold that purpose. And I think when we came together, it just really is where the magic happened, because we both have very different strengths. And I think the strengths complement each other. I think that us having have done this on our own, it would have been a lot harder. And so, as far as your question around the personal side, I think we're both really committed to doing our own work as people and continuing to learn and grow, whether we're working with someone to continue our own work together. And then also the journey continues around, how do we continue to learn to work together when we have our own triggers and our own obstacles? How do we overcome those in order to strengthen the relationship? And I think that's really an ongoing thing, because I don't think any relationship is like, there's any perfection in any relationship, but part of the learning is part of the journey of going through and learning to how do we want to choose to respond to our challenges, together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think constantly designing, redesigning, and being clear about boundaries, especially with the kids, is critically important. Without that, I think we would just seep into some pretty challenging spaces. So I think we've got pretty good over the last few years in putting those boundaries in place and then honoring those boundaries as best we can.
And I think we also have an amazing coach that we work with that helps us as business leaders and in our co-relationship.
Yeah.
That helps us be accountable to showing up the way that we want to show up. And I think without that objective party, it is harder to get out of our own muck sometimes, And so, yes, another way of another sort of speaking to a plus for coaching is that, yes, we use our own coach to support us and our relationship and our different roles that we have together.
So there's so much that's so rich. So thank you for that. Like, I hear that having the shared purpose, it just amplified what was already in, say, the romantic relationship in a way that it's brought you both so much greater alignment to your individual purpose to have a shared purpose. And then you're using the skills and the concepts. Like I heard Mike say, we're designing our alliances and our different roles. Like there's a real awareness around that, which that is a place that I know for all of us as practitioners, we're always saying to leaders, or if we're training people in a public setting, the designed alliance is like, to me, that's the ROI of coaching. If you can get that down and design alliances with as many people in as many ways and be consistent with it, it's a game changer. And then, of course, you're actually being resourced yourself by having your own coach. So this is all like an example too, I hear, of your shared values, right? Around ongoing learning and growth that you bring to the business partnership and the life partnership. Super sweet.
I think there's been an evolution of what that looks like, because I think in the beginning it was like there wasn't a lot of room to make mistakes. And because we were, especially in the beginning, it was like we were having kids and life was very chaotic. And there was like, it was like there wasn't a lot of permission from both of us. But having worked with a coach and in our own evolution, I think right now we have a lot more permission to make mistakes and not be perfect, and to accept our faults within each other, and to know that that's part of being human. And how do we give ourselves grace and recover back to a place where we can get back to a baseline?
I think the one designed alliance question that probably gets used more than any other is, how do we want to be together when times are tough? Because that's a lot of the time.
Yeah, especially these days, right? Like the past 4.5 years on planet Earth.
Well, everything. Yeah. Business, you name it. And so there's triggers all the time that send us, below the line into that reactive space. And it really is that recovery where, to some extent, if I'm the one that's triggered and I'm feeling, say, resentful, it's like I can do so much on my own. I'm responsible for that. But we're also calling in on the other one to support in that moment.
Beautiful. What are some of the skills beyond what we've mentioned that you're seeing have skills or concepts around coaching and leadership that are having a significant impact in your organizational clients these days?
It's almost like similar to what we practice. And I think a lot of the skills are around like that acceptance of we're all going to fall below the line into a reactive place, like it's human nature, and knowing that that's going to happen. How do we help people become aware and conscious of that and make a choice to look at what are the tools that I need to get above the line? And we say above the line, but what are the tools that I need to get back where I feel like I can operate in a place that feels creative? It feels where I can feel empowered, and I can be my authentic self as a leader. And so for me, what I mostly see in organizations is that right there is that recovery time, working on that recovery time of falling below the line and not staying there for too long, but then that recovery time shortens getting back. And I think I find that as a theme in organizations, really helping people learn, giving them the skills where they feel confident to recover, and then be able to be more in a conscious state and more in conscious relationships to others from that place.
So valuable. What are you seeing, Mike?
Yes to all of that. And I think there's the sort of the obvious, like active listening, powerful questions, all of those foundational skills that are really needed. I think where we're seeing a lot of the return on investment out of the one-on-one is into the teams setting. So it's a lot of the design that needs to happen. Like, do you actually need a team right now? Sometimes you don't, but you assume you do. So a lot of the research that's been done over the years by Hackman and Wagner around that. And then as a team coach, like knowing when to name team dynamics and then introduce skills to the team so that they can really develop themselves. And then the team coach can move away and hold that accountability for a sustainable, high-performing team.
And you're really transferring the skills that you've demonstrated as the team coach, which is such a great return for an organization's investment.
Yeah. And it's sort of like you're giving them the skills that they need based on a situation like a team meeting at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's like, oh, wow, this team really could benefit from listening and learning some skills and then having to figure out how to bring that back. It's like meet them right where they are in the moment, transfer the skills, give them feedback, and then step back.
How do you define team coaching at ACT?
You want to start or?
You can go.
I seem to be able to reel off these definitions.
I got one too.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So how do we define team coaching? I think it is then partnering with a team instead of an individual, partnering with a team to ultimately help them become more aware as a team of their dynamic and how they're working together so they can make more informed, conscious choices and decisions where they can take responsibility for their decisions and choices that they're making. So ultimately have ownership of those. And so the part that we're really curious about is how do we help teams become more effective in doing that. And so the team coaching process is us really partnering with them to transfer skills, knowledge. So ultimately they know how to do that themselves. And we're a partner in that context.
Yeah. I think the role of the team coach, we often think of team coaching as somebody who's sitting there with the team, naming what they're seeing, the dynamics and all of that. And I think what we're seeing now is, again, going back to the research, is the team coach has got to work upstream with the team leader. And maybe they do one-on-one coaching with the team leader, but it's to really understand, who needs to be on the team. Do we actually need a team? What's the supportive organizational context for this team? Really setting them up for success before you even start with the team. There's a lot of work that often needs to happen before you actually start team coaching to set them up for success and set yourself up for success as the team coach.
Isn't that a great question? Do we need to be a team?
Do we even need to be a team? That's right. I don't think most people would even think about asking that question.
Yeah.
What is the interdependence? Do they have a compelling purpose? There's some good questions to ask. And oftentimes people come to us saying, hey, my team's dysfunctional, no, toxic. And we ask those questions. It's actually, this really doesn't need to be a team. Or the team that you have right now is a bunch of functional experts who are there because they're the finance guru and presenting their area, but not actually doing what's right for the organization.
And just like in your dynamic, they don't have a shared, like what you've done in your dynamic, I should say, they don't have a shared mission, vision, purpose. And by helping to clarify that make what wasn't a team, because then they're rallying around something. Yeah,
Yes.
This has been coming up in the season. And I think we have business leaders who are listening in, we have coaches, of all different generations, and coaches who are looking to do more work inside organizations. One of the themes has been learn how to work with a system. It's not just about taking coaching that you've done with individuals and then plopping it into an individual or a team inside an organization. And what you've just described really elegantly is when you're setting up for a team coaching engagement, you are engaging the system. And how does this entity of this group of humans work within the entire system? So that's really an important. Thank you, ACT leadership, for that.
And it's tough. It's really I think you could be an amazing one-on-one coach. There's quite a lot to do unless you have many years consulting or leading teams or being a trainer, or facilitator, which may make this easier. But we do see that to be able to stand on your feet in front of a group of people in a tough dynamic with a leadership team, which are often the ones that are going to pay you sufficiently to, warrant you doing the work, where it's highly consequential. It's not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it's not for everyone.
It requires different skill set.
Yeah.
It definitely does. How do you think your consulting background has supported you to build, act, and do the work that we're talking about right now?
Yeah, great question.
I think one of the things that comes to mind initially is that because of our consulting background, understanding some of the challenges that teams or organizations are facing and then putting it into context. And so one of the things when we were creating this, the team coaching aspect was like, we want to make this really real and easy for people to use and apply. We don't want to come in with these like big concepts and then people look at, how do I not use this? But as Mike mentioned before, we come in and take real topics, real challenges that teams are facing and work right there with them so to make them applicable for them. So I think the context of having consulting and leadership experience has really helped inform the structure of our program.
You know, how the like successful companies like Toyota, it was like to put that production worker, equipping them to be having the empowerment, you know, to stop production lines. It was all about making the employee front and center. And then as I went into consulting 25 or something years ago, it was the change management strategies was very much around, you know, we'd sit in the boardroom, we'd look at the leadership team, and it would be like, she's a blocker. You know, how are we going to move her to be on board?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, hold on, you can't move people, right? They choose if they want to move or not. So we had all these manipulative strategies to try and get them all, should we give them some more money? Should we like, and I think people feel that, and that's why there is so much resistance to change and so much failure with change. And I think coaching then came along. And for me, it was like, okay, there's some cool stuff in here. Let's grab the cool stuff and integrate it into organizational design models, change management strategies, leader development programs, so that it does create that inclusivity as a culture. And then when you do make change, you slow down to speed up, but you do eventually get a much more sustainable, positive outcome.
Brilliant. I mean, it's really served you, the consulting background. I can hear it in both of your answers and the different ways that you've been creating what you're offering, and what the way you're able to, the lens you're able to look at through it at a system, how you're able to pull in all the different parts of it. I think that's really important. What are some of the downsides of running a leadership, coaching, and consulting business?
That's a powerful question. To think about that. You know, I think when you're responsible for in any business context, when you're leading a company, I think when you're responsible for people that work with you, you know, with the company that are supporting you, you feel responsible, right? And so I know for me, there's a big, probably for both of us, there's a big weight of like, you know, taking care of our people. And that comes with, you know, a big responsibility. And I think the other aspect of the downside, there's not many downsides that are coming to mind, except to continue to navigate to create the desired culture that we desire, where we continue to cultivate culture within our company of, you know, authenticity, teaching them coaching skills, the reactive to creative aspect, and continuing to help people and encourage people to utilize the skills so we're all working together, you know, in an efficient, productive way. So I think, you know, and then the other thing that comes to mind is just work-life balance. You know, I think we're getting better at making sure that this is part of our purpose and of who we are. And we're also have other things that we're interested in and that we do. So, you know, getting that work-life balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, the thing that's challenging is, you know, when we talk to our clients about being coach-like and what it means, the question that we always challenge ourselves with is, are we honoring this fully at ACT? You know, in terms of empowering others, being coach-like, creating that safe environment. And I think for the most part we do, although I think it's better to ask them than us.
Yeah.
But when things aren't quite working, as they don't always beautifully, my inner critic is always saying, oh, you know, that client that you told this, like, are you really honoring that right now? Because it doesn't feel like it. And so you hold a really high standard for yourself in terms of, you know, practicing what you're preaching or teaching.
I hear you on that. It is, That's why it's a practice, right? And people, I know when we're training people, they think behind the scenes, I like to let them know behind the scenes, we're not always coach like because we are humans. We get reactive. With my business partner, Rachel, or with my life partner, Mike. So we're co-building a home right now. So when you were speaking about the things that really brought you together for ACT, I was thinking about when him and I developed a shared mission. That's when things really came online for us too. And so, and it doesn't mean that there's not these tremendous human moments where stress, overwhelm, change impacts the dynamics. So we have to all give ourselves grace. I had the privilege of working with Erin for quite a few years when we were internal at Coactive. We were part of the team running the corporate division. And Erin, you were one of the strongest leaders I've come across in my 25 plus years of working. You have such a grace about you and patience, such a deep kindness and strength. So there's no doubt to me that when you went on to do something else with, Mike with you, I didn't know Mike as well, but I know he's exceptional too, that you'd build something that you'd be practicing walking the talk. You'd build a powerful team so that you could create more of the world that you want to live in. So I'm just grateful for the time that we did share internally and I got to experience your leadership directly.
Thank you. And I mean, I just say a big ditto to that. And the acknowledgements that what you saw in me is often, I think, what I saw in you as well. And I loved our partnership together, and I loved our friend, our friend, our ongoing friendship as well. I think when you meet people like that, that really stand out in your life, you stay connected because it matters. And what I appreciate about you, and this is kind of bringing it back to the coaching context, is that, yes, I moved on and I'm so glad I did, but it took a lot of courage to do that. And you were helping me, coaching me to do it in a way that served us, and there was moments where I got scared and it was like, I don't know, can I do this? And you were such a champion to that. So, I really hold that deeply in my heart and grateful for those moments. And I think that's also part of the coaching aspect is when you have those relationships, how do you hold a greater vision for somebody that they might not see themselves, or that greater potential that they might not see themselves? And how do you continue to hold that and champion someone into what they maybe not know, but also willing, can they step into that? And I think that's sort of an example of what happened there. And I also see that happening with you and the work that you're doing professionally and also personally is continuing to step into what really deeply matters to you and where you're able to really expel the Christy energy,
Oh, thank you, my friend. I remember sitting outside of Karen and Henry Kimsey house with you having that discussion. You were ready to move on. And I do think this championing skill in coaching is such a powerful skill. And, my husband's in construction. And so sometimes I tell him about my days and he just thinks it sounds like La La Land. How do you champion someone today? You designed an alliance, you acknowledge the person. And so it's really interesting to take these skills and translate them into organizations. And I'm going to make this transition now because a lot of the work you do is inside the government and the governments in the United States of America. And we know that this is a very tumultuous time politically. And this is globally, it's not just the US. So how are you seeing the work that you're doing through ACT having a positive impact on this current political state that we're in?
I mean, the US federal government is huge. The Department of Defense is almost $1 trillion. And, huge hierarchies. They still, to some extent, have that command and control structure, which you really do need when you've got that sort of scale. but I think with the challenges, it's like, how can we continue to innovate, retain younger staff that are coming on board um, within that structure? And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why they're embracing coaching is there are a lot of senior folks who have got a lot of skills and experience who can provide mentoring, but sometimes it's too much mentoring. It's like, this is what I did for 30 years. Do this, do that.
Yeah.
And so the coaching is a little bit more about the invitation to the younger person to share, well, what do they want to get out of their career, and then tailoring their responses better. So they're still giving advice. They're not training to be formal coaches, a lot of these folks, but it's able to integrate a recommendation with something that is meaningful for that individual and purposeful in terms of where they want to go in their career. So this thing a huge benefit on retention, in folks just being more engaged and wanting to stick around in their careers.
There's the ROI right there, folks.
Yeah.
What are you seeing, Erin?
I think this is, again, I don't want to make an assumption about the whole federal government, but we do a lot of work inside the DoD, and and what the work what we've seen is based upon their hierarchical structure. There's a lot of leaders that are operating from their own agendas because they have to get things through.
Yeah.
And so they've developed strategies that might not be sustainable for them. And oftentimes, they're not going through training that helps them learn how to work together and be more trustworthy of each other.
Yeah.
Their neck is on the line. And so when you're part of a culture that is demanding and that is, just demands results constantly, you develop patterns that align with that. And so I think for me, from what I've seen in the work that we've done, is the biggest, I think, ahas for people have been when they learn about their own agendas and they learn about how they're missing the opportunity to engage with each other and work with each other in a way that is more sustainable. And so I see that as being one of the biggest ahas is when they're like, oh, wow, there's so many agendas here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not seeing each other's perspectives. We're not able to really hear each other in order to then align to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's part of our work too, where we want to get more deeper into, particularly given the political climate of our country, is how do we help create more alignment when we don't have to be in agreement, but how can we learn to create alignment amongst leaders and parties and people where where people can align enough to move forward that aligns with the greater mission, purpose, or vision.
Yeah.
And I think we get stuck in everybody has to agree.
Yeah.
Everybody has to agree, and everybody has to, that we get into right or wrong decision making. And I think when we're stuck in that perspective, it gets hard to come out of that.
Do you think this is possible? This vision you just articulated?
I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. That's a big question.
Yeah.
I think when you look at, one of the books in our program is Quiet Leadership on David Rock.
Yeah.
And just looking at how our brain works and how we're hardwired to give advice and tell and whatever. I think there's a lot of work we need to do as humans still to get there. Bless you. But coaching, I think, is probably right now what we and our clients and our students who work in big organizations are seeing as probably the best way to bridge that.
Yeah.
And we've got some really big success stories from students that are doing this in their organizations. But there's still a lot of work to do. And in some ways, I think societally, we're going backwards.
And I think there needs to be a readiness, right? Because as you know, Christy, as someone who works with organizations, you can't help structures or systems unless there's a readiness there and a willingness.
Yeah.
And so until there's more of a readiness, I think, and willingness, then it feels challenging to accomplish what we've just talked about. And having done a lot of work in the federal government, there are a lot of there is a lot of readiness there.
Yeah. How do you know when they're ready? Like, what's the criteria that you'll say, okay, they're ready, let's go?
Well, it's interesting because when they pick up the phone or when there's an RFP that lands, it's not always clear what it is. They're not always able to articulate clearly what it is they want. So it's like, we think we want coaching. There are some of the challenges that we're facing. And so it requires, that's the frustration with federal. You don't get to talk to people much. You just respond to something and you hope you win it, and then you figure it out.
Yeah.
But you've already have a contract. The proposal turns into a contract. But the ability to have a conversation and get beneath, and really this is where coaching comes in, is that ability to listen, paraphrase, and allow some emotional expression from this person who's often the leader, is overwhelmed, and then tailoring a response, which could be a lot of different elements of coaching, to really support them in getting what it is that they need.
I think, and that's really from the upfront side, but also assessing their desire to create a culture that is something that they don't currently have. They know that whatever they have is not working, but there's a desire there to create something more that has a higher level of impact. And so when we're able to really look at, is that desire, is there alignment around that vision? And you can tell when there's not alignment, or people aren't bought in, or there's no executive sponsor of some sort of change initiative. Without that sponsorship, I think it becomes really difficult to continue and carry on work. And I would really encourage, like, your listeners and that too, because we've worked with a lot of organizations. I'm thinking about one nonprofit that we worked with recently, where there was executive sponsorship and then there wasn't. Yeah. And without that, we couldn't carry on, and it makes it hard to do the work that needs to be done.
It's a really important point. It goes back to engage the system, not just the individual, and really ask questions about the system and try to meet more people if you can, or do additional research, like talk to people who are amongst the system, because I don't think any of us who get into this work, we want to just check the box, right? We want to come in and we want to have an impact. We want to support people to live better lives and do better work. And so this piece is really, really important.
Yeah.
So what are you most excited about? Like, what's coming on the horizon at ACT Leadership, or inside your home with your girls?
You want to start?
I could go in many, many directions.
What's most excited about working out this afternoon?
Maybe
training for another Ironman, perhaps.
Yeah, possibly another one later this year. We'll see about that. I think for me, like on the business side, I think there's so much more scope with team coaching. It's sort of a new field. I think, Ashley Abbott is an amazing guy, and he's done an incredible job pulling together a lot of different discrete areas, and also, having it credentialed through the ICF. And so bringing that into organizations more. And I think there's so much learning. Every time we do an engagement in an organization, there's a whole bunch of new lessons learned each time we do that.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about that piece.
And ditto to what Mike said. And for me, I think part of my future work, or where I'm called to do more work, is around embodiment. I think that we're not fully accessing all of our own resources, and so helping people to do more of that work. And also I get really curious still about the boundary of coaching and therapy and trauma. So some of my work is taking me to help coaches become more trauma. I'm using the term trauma aware, how to help coaches become more trauma aware when they're working with their clients. So that's kind of more to come with where my work is taking me personally.
Beautiful. I really believe too strongly that in organizations need to support people to become more embodied. And that helps with all of the great wisdom you've dropped today, as far as being able to be aware when we've gone below the line and how do we recover. And so different somatic and embodiment tools. We've had a lot of clients hiring us to bring in like yogic sciences. As you know, like you, I'm steeped in it and practice it. And it's been so thrilling to be invited to come and speak to these organizations and do breath work. And I mean, I know we have a lot of colleagues who have been doing it for years, but I think there is, because of the times we're living through, there's more of an appetite for it. And if you find the right organization with the right leaders who are going to endorse it, I believe strongly it's a way forward. And Mike, I love what you're saying about team coaching, because that's transferring the embodiment of the skills that you have as the lead, as the coach, to that team or to the team lead. So yay for that. Erin, we heard from Mike a little bit about a really powerful coaching moment that he had. Will you tell us about a powerful coaching moment that you had? And you don't have to name a person, you could, but just like what happened for you?
Like when I was coached or me coaching someone else?
When you were coached.
Oh, okay. I think for me, it's sort of back in the beginning. The moment that stands out for me is when I was first coached early on in my journey around knowing I was at greater choice, not knowing that I could be at choice in a specific circumstance, and learning about what it means to fully be at choice. For me, when I was coached around that, it was hugely powerful. And so I think that's partly reason why I have such deep connection to helping people be at greater choice, because of my own journey around it. So that moment really sticks out. And I think for a more recent moment, just moments in our work that Mike and I do together, moments of how my patterns show up in the relationship, and how that is really the true test of, I think, success in relationships is learning to work with each other's patterns in a way that feels fulfilling and engaging and fruitful for both parties. And so I think most of my learning and my ahas are coming from the relationships that I choose to be in, and how those patterns get manifested. Yeah.
Very powerful. In the yogic sciences, they say that relationship is the highest form of yoga, meaning it is going to bring up the most triggers, the most learning, the most healing opportunities. And I just commend both of you for, it's a twofer relationship. I get to leave my business partnership, for moments of time, and then leave my intimate relationship for moments of time. But you two have it all entwined, and you do it with such grace and such elegance. And I know that there's tough times behind the scenes, right? But making it a lifestyle, that's what I'm really hearing it. It's a practice that you're committed to.
Feels like we need to end with an or something.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's end with this. I want to just hear a soundbite from each of you of what is your, in this context of the ROI of coaching in the workplace, what is your high dream or your wish or your vision? Where are you pointing us in this conversation?
So I'd like to end with a big stretch that goes beyond organizations and looks maybe geopolitically around some of the things that are happening. I was privileged to go to the Ukrainian border when the war started and saw some horrendous things. And I do believe there is an opportunity for us to extend what we do, meeting them where they are, and serve people that are suffering from really deep trauma right now. And I think it's a place, once we are established and comfortable in what it is we do, to then look beyond the organization into some pretty dark places right now where people desperately need support.
I remember seeing when you did that work, and you're courageous.
Thank you.
I would just encourage your listeners to just be conscious around the organizations and who you choose to work with, around why you choose to work with them, who you choose to work with, and And then what ultimately do you want to, what's the ultimate end game or impact that wants to be created? Being conscious about the relationships you enter into with your clients, or whether that's one-on-one or organizationally, and looking at ultimately co-designing, co-creating the outcomes from your engagements. So I think that's where maybe I would that feels top of mind right now, where I would point people. Yeah.
And ACT as awareness, choice, transformation. Did I get that?
You got it.
Yeah. And that I like you brought that in so subtly at the top of the conversation, Erin, and how powerful to be creating work and programs and training and content and experiences around those three important embodiments and pillars. And thank you both for saying yes to this. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. I miss you. I hope to see you soon in the flesh and give you a hug and your two girls, because I haven't even, well, I did meet one, but yeah.
Chloe, when you gave her your cape.
I gave her cape.
When she was maybe 2 years old. So we still have the cape.
Yeah, we do. And we'll bring them to you, not the capes. Well, the girls and the capes.
Bring the girls and the capes. Thank you, dear ones. Thank you.